Bullshit.
The No BS Marketing Show is brought to you by Larimer's men's and women's designer clothing. Free shipping, free returns. Shop men's and women's designer clothing, shoes, accessories, jewelry, and more online at larimers.com or in-store downtown Pittsburgh. It's the No BS Marketing Show. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Chris Brodman, but first, let's cut the bullshit. We're taping the show just days after the big event this past weekend. Floyd Mayweather knocked out Conor McGregor Saturday night in the event of the year. I didn't say fight of the year because this was more about marketing, messaging, and money than boxing. That's okay. Nothing wrong with a big event that generates interest among the masses, that gets people going, that makes people want to watch it and be part of the festivities. Mayweather and McGregor definitely share one thing for sure: the desire and ability to self-promote, to spread the word about themselves, to stir emotions among those who like them and those who don't. Unfortunately, some of the messaging was, in my opinion, distasteful and plays off of emotions and a tribal mindset. Now, Seth Godin and others often talk about tribes in a positive way, in that we want to have loyal, raving fans, people who share a tribe mindset in the most positive way, people who love a product or service or idea or mission. I joke that you're either a no BSer or you're not. And if you're a no BSer, you're part of our tribe at Mass Solutions. And we had a great event Thursday where we had our tribe here. But this event and the build up to it took that mindset to the max, and not so much in the positive direction. But I do have to give credit to both Mayweather and McGregor as far as message discipline. They both were on pretty much all the time for the past few months. They stuck to their key messaging points and made sure to push buttons. They also used the media to tell their story. And they used the media. I can't say I like the messaging or the manipulation of the masses, and I won't say this was a great fight by any stretch of the imagination from a boxing standpoint. And if we wanted to go down the sports path, that's the thing. The expectations for McGregor were so low that people were drunk and screaming and thinking it was a great fight. It was not a great fight, but it was a dramatic event that energized a lot of people, stirred emotions, and was talked about throughout the world. Our guest today is Chris Brodman, president and CEO of Metz, Lewis, Brodman, Mastovich, one of Pittsburgh's largest law firms. Chris concentrates his practice on mergers, acquisitions, and corporate law. Chris, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Dave. Good to be here.
We're happy to have you, and we have a lot to cover. But first, give me your thoughts on the big entertainment event, Mayweather-McGregor.
I loved it. The hype. You know, it was maybe distasteful, but boy, they really generated a lot of interest. And I, maybe one of the suckers who couldn't wait to spend my $100 to see what happened. I think maybe kind of like why people rubberneck at a car accident.
Exactly.
You want to see what's going on there. But I thought it was a great event. I thought that it was very interesting. Both guys made a lot of money, obviously, and let's not kid ourselves about what it was really all about. But they put something on the line too. You know, Mayweather. Yes. I don't know how much he cares about his sport, but if he would have lost, it would have been a crushing blow for boxing. And McGregor to go in there fighting one of the best ever, never having boxed professionally. That takes some stones. So I thought it was very interesting.
And I'm all for the fun part of it. Like Alec was texting me and Brevin, they were both at events watching it. And I just was watching it with Dar, just the two of us. I didn't want to be out after a long week, but I'm all for that. I've had that myself over our lives watching, Leonard and all those people like that. And of course, all the Tyson fights when we were coming up. I was fine with it being an exciting event. I just thought, before the event, I told my sons, I said, from a boxing standpoint, this is a joke. I said, there's zero chance of McGregor winning this fight. And they were like, no. And I said, you don't understand. You're talking about possibly the greatest defensive fighter ever. I said, it's going to be boring. It's so forth. But to my opinion, Mayweather knew that McGregor had no chance because Mayweather fought a fight. He never fights. he comes out and dances around and wins on points. He actually came forward the whole fight because he was like, I know this guy's not going to really hurt me. That was my opinion. I mean, just from a box, and I'm a boxing guy in that it's so lame now, but 70s, 80s, 90s, boxing was still good. The last 15 years, not. But that's the thing that surprised me because when Mayweather fought Pacquiao and other people, he was just dancing. He actually, from the fourth round on, he actually came forward.
Yeah. I think that one of the things that really impressed me about Mayweather is I think he's one of the smartest athletes. I mean, I don't really see, obviously the guy has a massive ego in some respects, but when it comes to into the ring, he has a tactical plan for each opponent and he doesn't deviate, and that's what he did that night in my, non-expert opinion. But, you thought maybe I'm the greatest boxer of all time. This guy's never boxed. I'm not going to let him win the first 3 rounds.
Right.
Well, he didn't care about that. Nope. He had a plan, and he didn't let his ego get in the way. So that was very impressive to me.
It was. Well, let's move on to your story. We've gone through the McGregor-Mayweather story. Let's move into the Chris Brodman story. Let's start by having you walk us through your educational background, your career journey.
Sure. I went to Summit High School in Summit, New Jersey. Went to Allegheny College, graduated there in 1985.
Let's stop there. What brings you from Summit, New Jersey to Allegheny College near Pittsburgh?
Actually, I got recruited to play football at Allegheny. I took a bus for my visit. It's not like today. My kids were driving them to 40 college visits. I think I visited 3 schools and went on my own to all 3. But I went up, made a visit, really loved the place, and that was it. That's how I ended up there.
So you go there, primarily your decision was made based on mostly football.
No, I mean, I was looking at all schools that were, smaller schools where I did want to play football. I played baseball there as well. But also that were, good academic institutions.
So you were the original Deion Sanders, playing 2 sports in college. I'm impressed. Alec had a chance to kind of do that, and he didn't. He chose not to. But I kept saying to him, like, only 6% of people play college sports, and like 1/2% play 2. Tell me what that was like. That was pretty intense.
No, at Allegheny back in the early 80s, it wasn't intense. No, it wasn't. Football was more structured. The baseball team, they got really good after I left. But when I was there, one of the assistant football coaches was the baseball coach. First day of practice, he'd throw out the bats and balls, and we'd kind of screw around, show up for the first game, and play. So,
isn't that amazing how baseball was back then?
Yeah.
In this area, in the place where there's not the warm weather, my high school coach would actually come and turn the hitting machine on, and then he would go to the local Legion and have a beer and come back at the end of practice. I swear to you.
I believe it.
I made the lineup card.
Yeah.
I did. I made the lineup my senior year. He'd go ahead, write out who do you want?
Yeah. But it was fun. Mostly it was fun. Some of my, I'm 54 years old now, so that was a long time ago. But really the people that some of the closest people that I'm closest to are a bunch of the guys that I went to school with and played with.
What position did you play in football?
I played quarterback in football, and I played shortstop in baseball.
So you were the quarterback at Allegheny?
I was.
Wow. How'd that go? Did you guys win a lot?
No, we were 500, and I got hurt pretty much every year.
Really?
Yeah.
Were you a more of a running style?
No, I was not. I was I'm only 5'10", but I was a drop back passer. Yeah.
Impressed.
Not much of a runner.
I'm impressed,
Not
man.
much of a runner.
You got to show some game film, man.
I think I have a few tapes at home somewhere, probably.
You got to bring those to like a Vistage meeting or something. So you're at Allegheny. What was your major?
History.
When did you start thinking about the profession, of the law profession?
About 2 years after I graduated Allegheny. Dave, I was a terrible student. I was in the bars 6 nights a week. I was not in class every day, and I really just scraped by to get out of there. It wasn't until my senior year when a bunch of friends were interviewing and getting job offers, and I was like, maybe I should. Maybe there's a consequence for how I've handled the last 4 years. So, no, I was a terrible student. Never would have even at that point thought about furthering my education. But what happened was I took a job. I was going to coach football, but my parents weren't loaded. So I realized I couldn't survive on the $2,500 and the meal ticket I was going to get for being an assistant college football coach. And I ended up with a job at a mortgage company, as a loan originator, which was great. But it took me about a year to realize that it wasn't what I wanted to do for the rest of my life. It was kind of interesting. It hit me really all at once. We had a retirement party for one of the other loan originators. This guy had the same job I did, and he's retiring, and his little cubicle's next to mine, and we're bringing in the cake, and he was a sweet guy. But I remember thinking to myself, that's not what I have in mind for myself for the next 40 years.
Yeah.
And started to think about, okay, what am I going to do? How am I going to get there? And I realized that I interviewed for a bunch of jobs, and what I learned was I think I'm pretty good. I think I'm going to do well. I know I have it in me. But the people I'm interviewing with, they're looking at my resume and what I've accomplished in black and white. And I think I had maybe a 2.4 grade average. I had a, minimal experience in a mediocre type job, and they weren't knocking down my door to give me the next greatest opportunity. So I thought to myself, I need to get something on my resume that shows I've achieved at a high level. And the only thing I could think to do was to go back to school and do well. So I ruled out medical school pretty quickly because I never took a science class in college. Same with business school. I was a history major, had no business background. So I took the LSAT test. I knew I'd have a hard time with my grades getting in to law school, but I scored very well on the LSAT. And I was accepted into law school. And that's how
Where'd you go to law school?
University of Akron.
What's the LSAT like?
It was a long time ago. It's very similar to the process and the nature of it's very similar to the SAT. Just the questions are a little bit different. They're more focused on reasoning and analytical skills as opposed to math or English.
So it does really get your intellectual capacity as opposed to like the MCAT is a little bit of that, but the MCAT does require some of the business knowledge. Like I barely remember it as well because the MCAT's when I was younger, but I remember the same thing happened to me. I was nervous about that and I scored really high on it. But I do remember that you did have to like relate to some accounting principles and things like that. So the business undergrad probably helped a little bit, but it sounds like this is more your thought process.
Correct.
And we're both non-experts, just like we were on the McGregor-Mayweather fight. But the beauty of the No Bullshit Marketing Podcast is you just admit you're not an expert and just go through it. So you go and you decide to go to the University of Akron.
Being a non-expert has never really slowed me down from offering my opinion on things.
So you chose Akron. That's kind of close to. Well, actually, I should say, where did you go live after Allegheny? Did you stay in Pittsburgh? Or did you go back to Jersey?
No, I stayed in Pittsburgh. My mortgage originator job was here in Pittsburgh. I met my wife at Allegheny, and she's a Pittsburgh girl. And like many Pittsburgh women, they aren't leaving Pittsburgh. So I discovered that early, and
it goes even deeper than that. They won't leave the north or south
That's right.
hills.
That's right. Yeah.
Or if they're from Kittanning or Indiana or Johnstown, they don't leave that.
Yeah. So Sharon and I met in college. So,
And men too.
Yeah.
Western Pennsylvania, and we don't want to discriminate. Western Pennsylvanians do not leave.
Yeah. And my 30 plus years here, I can see why. I mean, it's been the right place for us to be, and I love it here. But yeah, I met Sharon in college, so my job was here. She had a job here. We actually were engaged and got married right after my first year at law school. So I knew for me, the other challenge on the law school front, I had good LSAT score, not good grades. I had to get in somewhere close because she had a job in Pittsburgh, and I didn't get in Pitt. I got waitlisted at Duquesne. Akron was the closest geographically. So I had my first year. I had an apartment in Akron, and I stayed there most of the time. On weekends, I'd come home. And my second year, I had an apartment there, but I was in Pittsburgh more often than the first year. The third year, I actually also had a clerkship with a Pittsburgh law firm. I didn't even have a place in Akron. I scheduled my classes. They had night school there as well, and if you were in the day program, as I was, you could schedule also classes in the night school. So I scheduled all my classes third year on 2 days. So I'd drive up there. I'd leave Pittsburgh at 6 a.m. I'd take class all day into the night, drive home, get home at 11 o'clock. And the other 3 days of the week, I worked in Pittsburgh, and obviously by that time we were married. So it was a tough 3 years.
Yeah, and that's interesting. So the first 2 years you didn't work at all while you were in law school.
No, I worked in the summers, but during the school year, no, I was 100% focused on the schoolwork.
So that was also an economic challenge then.
Yeah. Like I said, my parents weren't really in a position to help economically. Sharon, pretty much, she had a full-time sales job, and she carried all the financial burden those years.
So then you graduate, and the clerkship, does that help you, from a job standpoint? Do you end up getting some leads or connections from?
Yeah. Back then, the private practice of law, the lot of firms still had what we call the 2L summer program. And the larger firms still have it today. And you interview for your job after your second summer, and there's a very good chance that you're going to be offered full-time employment with that firm. So my second year summer was spent here in Pittsburgh at a firm called Dickey McCamey and Chilcote, wonderful firm. There were 6 of us that came in that summer. We all accepted full-time offers. So going into my third year of law school, I knew that I had a full-time job already lined up after I graduated in year 3.
That's comforting.
It is.
How long were you with that firm?
7 years. Yeah.
So talk about those first 7 years. What were some of the things you remember the most that made a big impact long-term on your career?
Yeah. One thing that really hit me early was that it's a business. And you might say, of course it's a business. Well, to me, I'm going in there to practice law, and I'm focused on, my skills and abilities, and my analysis being spot on, and all those things are true. You need to do all of those things. And I did. And I thought I did really well my first year, and I got what I thought was a measly raise. And some other people who, quite frankly, I'm thinking my work's better than them, I came to learn they got more money than I did. And I was kind of taken aback by that. And there was a lawyer there. He was only a year or two ahead of me. His name was Gene Giotto. Good guy. And I was bitching to Gene about it. And he said, listen, dummy, you want to get paid? You got to turn the numbers, period. You got to do the good work and everything, but you need to be focused every day on how much money you're generating for the firm. Look at that daily, weekly, monthly, and stay on top of it. And if you're focused on it, the numbers will take care of themselves. But if you're just going about your business every day, not worrying about how much revenue am I generating, the numbers aren't going to be there. So I learned very early on that you have to, on the financial side, you have to produce to end up where you want to be.
So that helped you really from an overall thought process standpoint. You were altruistic, doing a great job focusing on the product, but the reality for all of us is we have to focus on both.
That's right.
And that's probably still a challenge of juggling those two things even this late in your career.
It's a challenge from a management standpoint now to get the younger lawyers in our firm to buy into that approach and understand that and embrace it. For me, I have a pretty good handle on it at this point.
Yeah. So you embraced that very quickly after that little bit of advice. And let's talk a little bit, because you and I have had a number of conversations off the air, and it's a challenge that you're having to, which we all have, and every generation will have it. And this is the first time we've ever had 5 generations or 4 generations working together. So talk about some of the generational shifts and the opportunities that are there, and how adapting, because part of this show is about leadership and communication, and you're having to adapt because a 28-year-old attorney today has a much different mindset than a 28-year-old attorney of 1988. So what are your thoughts?
Yeah. I'll give you an anecdote.
Okay.
So, we being the management at Metz Lewis, we think about getting our firm to the next level. We're always looking, okay, this is great. Let's pat ourselves on the back. Things are going well. What's next? Because if we're not trying to move up the ladder, I believe sooner or later you're going to start sliding down the ladder. So, I don't know, a number of years ago, every year we review everything, and probably 3 years in a row, we're sitting around telling each other, what the heck's wrong with these younger folks? When we were their age, we had this much business and we were generating this and we were out developing relationships, and they're not doing that. What in the world is wrong with these people? And we would engage in firm activities to bolster the type of conduct that we wanted to see, and it wasn't turning into results. They weren't embracing it. So after a few years we're managed by a 5-person committee, us sitting around the table complaining what's wrong with these folks, we said, look, if we're good managers, instead of patting ourselves on the back for the way we've generated business and complaining about this next generation not doing the same thing, something's missing here. And if we're really good managers, we'll figure out how to, they're not going to do it the way we did it. That's obvious by now. So instead of complaining about it, there's talent there. Let's figure out how to use it in a different way than we used ours, but to get the same results, to generate business, to improve client service. So that really changed our focus as a firm. And to get the anecdote back to your question, we've really approached those folks differently as far as how we manage them, how we mentor them, what the opportunities are at our firm. For instance, we have a lawyer who is an equity partner at our firm, and he's rarely in the office. His wife has a job as a doctor, and she's very committed to it. She's very successful at it. They don't want daycare, so dad works from home most days. He's in the office 1 or 2 days a week, and we've made that work. And those are the types of things that we're seeing that we have to do to accommodate some of the different needs and thoughts of the next generation.
That's adapting, and it's about leadership and communication. That's Chris Brodman, the president and CEO of Metz, Lewis, Brodman, Must, O'Keefe. Hey, no BSers, you need to check out Larimer's men's and women's designer clothing. I've been a customer for over 20 years. Yep, when I was coming up in a clothes horse, I quickly learned that Larimer's was the place in Pittsburgh for men's clothing, and it's the same for women's clothing too. You can shop online at larimers.com or in-store in downtown Pittsburgh. I'm wearing a Robert Graham from Larimer's, and I've only had one compliment, but it's still early, but I typically get 3 to 4 compliments when I wear a Robert Graham from Larimer's. It's a unique style, and I love it. But I really enjoy going to Larimer's, and I actually bought online for the first time, and my sales connection, Roy Gross of Larimer's, has been calling on me 20 years since when John Paul would bring all the guys in at UPMC and introduce us to people. Roy's been calling on me since way back then. And he said, you don't have to get that stuff online. I said, Roy, you're just showing that you guys got the full spectrum. You got online, you got someone who'll come to your office, you got the store. It's all done through Larimer's, and CEO Tom Michael, tremendous guest when he was on the show. And so I'm happy to work for them and talk to people like you and our audience about how great Larimer's is. You were just touching on the way that you communicate with millennials and others at the firm. Let's go way back to when you were coming out, and other than family, who were your mentors and how have they impacted you?
Many, but not in the traditional sense of mentor. I don't think I've ever really had a mentor. Like when I think of a mentor in any event, I think of, a senior person who is in your field that takes you under their wing and mentors you directly. I've never had that person. But what I think done a pretty good job of is paying attention to those more senior people and making them unknowingly my mentor, really watching what they do and seeing how I focus on the ones who are successful. What is it that makes them successful? What are things that I could emulate that would help me get to the level that they're at? And that continues today, not just, in fact, I feel I've probably grown more in that respect in the last 5 years than I did in the first 20 years of my career, just watching other people, listening to other people and trying to pick up things that will make me better. Also, you mentioned Vistage. I've been a member for, I don't even know exactly, a year and a half. And again, I wouldn't say that I have any mentor there, but that's been a mentoring process for me. Just being around people like you and the other members. And our group chair, Chuck Ganaris, has really had an impact on how I think about things and go about things in my business.
Yeah, Vistage is all about personal and professional growth. And when you're in a position like yours or mine, there is some isolation because it's difficult to talk to. You can't talk to clients really that much about it, and you certainly shouldn't be necessarily voicing a lot of concerns to the subordinates. You want to talk to them, you want to mentor them, you want to coach them, but you don't want to complain to them. So it does, Vistage does give you an opportunity there to really work on personal and professional growth, and that falls under the mentoring. I really like the approach that your firm is taking with the one person who's the talented attorney and is in a situation where he's working from home, and just how you've decided to mentor and approach on the business development, because I think it was a really cool anecdote, because you could keep pounding that square peg round hole and trying to make someone be what they're not, and that's just not going to work.
So if I could go back to that, because there's a bunch of other things that anecdote has led to. And it is more mentoring, more formal mentoring. And so we are focused on that. It's a difference in how we review people. We are in the process of changing that right now. We're on the traditional annual review. You go through the whole year, and then a month before the scheduled review time, you send out a piece of paper to all the potential reviewers, and then you review the person. And what we suspect is that approach may not be the best approach to get the most out of the review process with the younger folks. So we're mentoring more. We are going to, it's not even a review, but a quarterly kind of checkup. And it's not just your typical, here's where your numbers are, here's the quality of your work. It ties in business development activities. It ties in are we giving them a platform to move their career in the direction that it wants to go? It's really focused around us providing not the employee, not only being focused on the employee providing the work that the firm needs, but the firm providing the platform that the employee needs to get what they want to get out of their career. And realizing that, again, the square peg and round hole, that may be a different thing for different people, right? It may not be everyone has to bill this many hours to be a success here. Your compensation is going to be variable based on your financial production, but you can have a different lifestyle depending on what's important to you. And still, we need to figure out, if you're a talented person, how we can make that work for you and the firm going forward. So there have been a lot of changes around the idea of how do we promote the platform for the younger folks, and that's a work in process.
Still, it's a testament to leadership that you're taking the time to adapt and innovate and leveraging leadership and communication.
I would say it is a testament to leadership, but that leadership's not just me. I am the president of the firm, but we're run by a 5-person committee that gets along really well and gets us to the right answers and the right approaches, I think, collaboratively. And on the mentoring process and the career fulfillment opportunity, creating the opportunity for that at our firm, specifically, John Lewis has to get a lot of credit for that, because he probably thinks that way more than any of the rest of us. So it is leadership, but it comes from more than just the person who's got the president's tag next to their name.
Absolutely. And you just took that position, January of this year?
Yeah.
And who did you succeed?
Leroy Metz.
So you've got a great history there, and there's 5 of you that are really driving that leadership and the communication and the adapting and the innovation.
Correct. And Leroy was the president of the firm for, I don't know exactly, 17 years or so, and just set a great example. And really, in the early years, when the rest of the partners, like myself, were really much younger and not as established in our business, Leroy really carried the firm and always set a great example. And he still, by the way, is a full-time practicing attorney. He's still part of our management team. He has not slowed down one bit. If any of his clients are listening, I want them to know that. It just was. We felt the time from a succession standpoint to have someone else step into the president's role.
Hear more of my interview with Chris Brodman on part 2 of the No BS Marketing Show. The No BS Marketing Show is brought to you by Larimer's men's and women's designer clothing, free shipping, free returns. Shop men's and women's designer clothing, shoes, accessories, jewelry, and more online at larimers.com or in-store.